everyone, Jeffrey here, and we're back to a new Looney Tunes Show video, and we're back with a new reviewing of my favorite episodes of the Looney Tunes Show. And this one is absolutely crazy. Yeah, especially with some of the stuff of what it looks like, that it turns out it's actually not the case. But, yeah, this episode is crazy. Yeah, Porky does get tortured for no reason. Yeah, I guess you could say there's some. You know how they're on SpongeBob, there's SpongeBob torture porns, Squidward torture porns, Gary torture porns. You know how people would describe on there. I guess you could say the same thing when it comes to on this show with Porky torture porn, however people say it. Because yeah, Porky does get beat up for no reason exactly. But again, just of how this episode is, and especially with how Daffy is seeing everything that it turns out not to be the case, is very funny. So yeah, it starts with Daffy, Porky, and Bugs at the pizzeria and saying that there's one slice left and who was going to be able to get it. And yeah, it's Porky that gets the last piece, and Speedy brings out a bill, which Bugs is like that, let Bugs pay for it. Because he feels bad for Porky losing his job. And he says that he got a new job, and it's catering. And Daffy is like, catering? Nobody wants a pig serving their food. Yeah, he doesn't think that pigs, like Porky, could be caterers. And he says that his name isn't Health and Fitness Pig. And he says, am I right? And wants a high five. And Bugs then gets a call from Lola, saying that she broke her leg. And her story of how she broke her leg is ridiculous. But it's typical Lola in this show. And yeah, he's like, or he's just doing his hand again, like, am I right? Again, because he says that he's got stuck with the bill. And yeah, the doctor says that it's a simple fracture. And she'll have the cast off in 6 weeks. And yeah, here's this, apparently, like, I don't really get this story of how she broke her leg. Like, she was eating a cupcake, and she saw a baby on top of this building, so she ate her cupcake, got on this pipe, and started falling down, and Bugs thinks that's when her broke her leg, but she's like, no. She managed to grab onto this power line, or the wires of the power line, and swing herself, which she kept flying until she broke through the window, and he's like, that's how you break her leg. And she's like, no, I landed into this nice lady's apartment. And then goes to the elevator, which is out of order. She pries open the elevator and jumps down the elevator shaft. And again, Bugs keeps thinking, and that's when you broke her leg. And she's no. She says no again, and to listen. And she climbs the elevator shaft, breaks open the grid on top, and when she notices that it was actually a crow, not a baby, and kept trying to fight it off until she fell so many stories down. And then Bugs is like, then that's when you broke your leg. And she's like, no, I landed on this inflatable gorilla at this car dealer. And then he's like, how did you break your leg? And she's like, oh, I came in for a checkup and I slipped falling onto this table. What? Why tell that story? Why tell that made-up story and just say that, oh, that's not how, I didn't break my leg during that whole story. I broke my leg by slipping from falling onto this table, and saying that you should try it. No, then don't try it. You'd break your leg like me. And then the doc is like, she's a keeper. Like, Lola is extra in this show. That's all I can say. And yeah, Porky drops Daffy off, but he says, how am I supposed to go inside? Bugs is at home. Yeah, Daffy doesn't have keys or wallet. And he's like, he's not interested into those material possessions. And then he sees these glasses, and then he's like, why can't you take me to your house, Porky? And saying that Tina's at work, so he can't be dropped off at Tina's. And yeah, him being all suspicious, or all nervous too. And he's like, what are you up to? And like, aha, you were keeping these. And him telling Porky that he's too charming to be a caterer, and Porky's not charming. And then he goes to watch TV at Daffy's house, and he then says that Porky's a creepy recluse that keeps to himself. And then when he turns on the TV, he sees the news of the suburban strangler, and the police have no description to go on besides that the killer is a creepy recluse that keeps to himself. And that's what Daffy just described Porky. And then we see the description of the suspect that the police have involved. And the same exact description is exactly what Daffy is thinking Porky, because the police says that the suburban strangler is chubby, short, and bald with a pig-like nose. And yeah, Daffy is then actually thanking Porky. That Porky is the suburban strangler. And saying, if you see anyone with this description, call 911. And yeah, he goes and hearing some chopping, and we see Porky chopping this chicken, and yeah, he passes out. And then we see him waking up, and he realizes that he's in Porky's house, and seeing the suburban strangler paper, which he thinks that Porky's the suburban strangler, and he's got to call 911. But he's like, I don't remember the number for 911. And then he's like, I'll call 411, and they'll ask me for the number 911. I don't remember the number for 411. I mean, he's literally saying it. And then he tries to call Bugs, but he believes that Porky cut the phone line. And yeah, Porky just jump scares Daffy, and wondering if he can take him home, which he's like... Then Daffy is like, wait, you should never let your attacker take you to a second location. And then he's like, nice try, chubby, but you ain't taking me anywhere. And he calls Porky chubby, short, and bald with a pig-like nose. And of course, he runs away, and Daffy is like awfully sensitive for a wanted killer. And yeah, Lola is now living with Bugs while her leg is healing, even though she can't just go back to her parents' house. And yeah, she keeps asking for all these different things. She's gonna be something else though. And yeah, gives her some water, which then she's like, I gotta pee after drinking it, and gotta carry her up the stairs too. And then Daffy peeks out the door and goes into Porky's room, which, yeah, he's going through his clothes and finds these glasses. And then he's thinking if Porky is not the suburban strangler, and he's just going crazy about this whole thing. And yeah, he looks at this picture of Porky smiling, and he's like, no, that's the face of a killer. Like, do you think that's the face of a killer? And then he sees Porky sneakily, suspiciously coming out of this room. And then we see Porky saying it's in this sinister tone, like, it's me. It has to be done tonight. I think he's on to me. And yeah, Daffy is under the bed, and he's like, it has to be tonight. Come pick up Daffy when I'm done with him. He'll be in the garage, in the freezer. Yeah, he says. Daffy hears him say. And yeah, he's like, I gotta get out of here. And he says that he thinks that Porky locked him in. And yeah, he's wondering where he's doing. And he is wondering if he can make him a sandwich. And yeah, Daffy is then realizing that this is Porky we're talking about. We know him. He knew him his whole life. He would not hurt a fly. And then he sees the sandwich, which then he is saying Porky's arms, which yeah, is all red, thinking that is blood. And then he's like, you know what? I suddenly realize I'm not hungry. I think I should lie back down. And then yeah, later on, Daffy goes into this room that he saw Porky come out before, and he's like, what are you doing? And saying, do not go in there, in a sinister voice again. And he's like, now if you excuse me, I got some business to attend to. And then Daffy goes downstairs, and this is where it's absolutely crazy. The reflection, the shadow, the reflection of what Porky is doing, it looks like that he's stabbing a woman. Looks like he's stabbing a woman to death. And yeah, Daffy is, yeah, his face expresses it. But this is not what it looks like. It reveals later on. It reveals later on. But just how Daffy is imagining this. And he's like, that poor woman. Well, at least it's over. And then he gets a chainsaw. Yeah, he gets a chainsaw. And yeah, Daffy screams again. Like, first he thinks that it looks like Porky is stabbing a woman and then getting her with a chainsaw. And I thought I heard you downstairs. And he's like, nope, been here the whole time, just reading the paper. And then he has this look on his face when he sees the paper and wondering if he can make Daffy some tea. Yeah, wondering if he can make him some tea. Which then he goes to the door like, what could be in here? Knives, bodies, torture machines? And yeah, when he opens the door, he is all shocked to reveal what's inside. And yeah, Bugs comes back with some Chinese food and sees that Lola had this chair lift. And she wonders what's that. And he's like, it's your Chinese food. And she's like, that's not Chinese food. Chinese food is round with cheese and lots of different toppings. She's pretty much describing pizza. Yeah, that's not Chinese food. That's pizza. And she's like, oh, I don't know. I don't speak Chinese. And then she's got to... Yeah, then Bugs just goes back and gets her some... Like, poor Bugs, though. You have to feel bad for him as well, having to deal with this. And yeah, so he goes back upstairs. And yeah, Daffy sees all these different pictures of himself in this room while Porky is pouring the tea. And yeah, just so many pictures of Daffy. And even some with knives in them as well. And then Porky is wondering what he's doing in here. And Daffy knows what Porky's up to. And he's like, then you leave me no choice. And he goes to this drawer and he thinks that he's gonna pull out a knife. Because he says, make it fast. I don't deserve to suffer. I mean, I probably do, but I don't want to. And then he hands him this picture frame of his birthday. Because his birthday ain't until next week. But Porky said that, I know it's early, but you said you knew my secret. And he's like, apparently he sent all these pictures to Porky, because this is what he wanted for his birthday. And he's like, you don't want to murder me? And he's like, why do I want to murder you? And he's like, that's only a murderer asks that question. Yeah, after Porky is like, why would I want to murder you? I mean, Porky is definitely not that type of person. And then Daffy, for no reason, throws the hot, just-made tea onto Porky, and he runs towards Daffy, and Daffy slams this tray into Porky, knocking him back, and he falls down the stairs. And then he grabs Porky's legs, and talking about Speedy, which Daffy is like, what did you do to Speedy? And kicks Porky in the face, and steals Porky's wallet and keys, and says, look who's got a wallet and keys now, chubby. And, yeah, Daffy then straight up steals Porky's car to try to drive away, and ends up hitting Porky with his own car, and them just screaming at each other, and almost hits Bugs, and he's like, that's a good way to kill somebody. And then they go through this park, through these different things, and end up crashing Porky's car into the statue, causing Porky to fly into this bush. And when Daffy goes over to the pizzeria, looking out the window, he sees Speedy Gonzales on the floor, thinking that Porky killed him. But no, it's a surprise, of course. Yeah, everybody surprised him. Because, yeah, he was saying that he was getting suspicious. Daffy was getting suspicious of Porky, so they decided to throw his birthday party tonight. And he's saying all these different things, like, you locked the door so I couldn't get out, but he's like, the doors wasn't locked. And then he's like, then how can I just open it like this? And yeah, he's just so weak. Because, yeah, Speedy Gonzales just says that, just push it. Little kid, just pull it. Not push it, pull it. Little kids use it all the time. And then he's like, that doesn't matter. What you did was cut the phone line so I can call for help. But apparently the phone that he used, that was in the guest bedroom that Daffy was in, is just an antique. And then he's like, then he explained the blood on your hands. But it's not blood. It's paint for the banner on the party. And then he's like, you may have all these people fooled, but I saw you murder a woman with a chainsaw. and stabbing her as well. But no, it's just the ice sculpture of Daffy that he was making. That's a relief. That's a relief. It's actually an ice sculpture, so Porky wasn't literally killing a girl with stabbing her or killing her with a chainsaw. I mean, the silhouette, the shadow reflection really made it look like it in Daffy's or Porky's house. And then Bugs is wondering what's going on. And then, yeah, they see on the news that the Suburban Strangler has been captured. And that literally is a perfect resemblance to Porky. And he's like, well, you gotta give it the how close they look to being the same and doing the, am I right? And then it ends with Daffy and Bugs coming back home, and he's like, if anybody's gonna murder you, I'm going to. And then he's wondering what the chairlift is for, and he's like, I'm getting rid of it. And then, for real, this is where I really get sad for Bugs. And he's like, I got your pizza, Lola. And he sees that Lola's already got pizza. But she says, I didn't know when you would get back, so I ordered Chinese food. I got her own Chinese food, aka pizza. So yeah, made Bugs go all those ways just for nothing. And then Daffy is like, oh no, you're not getting rid of this. I'm never using the stairs again. Yeah. This episode was something, but definitely one of my favorites, I would say, from the first season. But yeah, I'd like to know what y'all think. Let me know in the comments below. Catch you next one.